It all started about a year and a half ago when I took out an online loan due to an urgent need. To manage the repayment pressure, I borrowed from other online lenders to cover the initial debt. This cycle of borrowing from one place to pay another quickly spiraled out of control, and my initial debt of 20,000 yuan ballooned into a monthly repayment of 20,000. Though I had a stable job, my salary capped at 5,000 yuan, which was hardly enough. Just as I was racking my brain for various part-time jobs, my mother, who had remarried and moved to another city, called me and suggested I go on a blind date.
If the man likes you, you can set the bride price as high as you want.
Considering the pressure of repayment, I was tempted. If the bride price was substantial enough, it could help me clear my debts at once. As for the husband, if I didn't like him, I could always find a reason to leave later. I set some ground rules for myself. The man couldn't be too old, too lecherous, or too greasy. He had to be physically fit and mentally sound. I put on my most refined makeup, wore the most elegant outfit from my wardrobe, and set off for the blind date. To my surprise, my date turned out to be a seemingly delicate woman.
You must be surprised. Let's sit and talk.
I guessed the man was forced into the blind date and had sent a young girl to put on a show and get rid of me.
You don't need to introduce yourself. You're probably the man's hidden girlfriend. If he doesn't want to go on a blind date, he could have said so earlier. I don't need to waste my time. I'm not in a hurry to get married, and I might not even like him.
You're very smart, but you've only guessed half of it.
Since I was already there, I decided to sit down and listen to the other half of the story.
I'm Emma, 23 years old, from another city. I have a boyfriend 6 years older than me. We plan to get married after meeting his parents. However, due to an unfortunate incident, I can no longer have children. His parents refused to let me into the family. His family is about to receive a large compensation from a property demolition. If he marries and has children before the payout, they could get an extra million yuan. So, his parents are actively seeking a suitable match for him, and among all the candidates, they have high hopes for you.
There were 3 reasons. 1. My mother had provided my birth details, and a fortune teller said I had a prosperous fate and was destined to be a good wife and mother. 2. I was a local with a stable job, which could avoid many post-marriage complications. 3. I had lost my father at a young age, and my mother had remarried, so after marriage, I would be closer to my in-laws.
For me, you have another advantage: you are in desperate need of money.
I didn't delve into how Emma knew this, but a woman who could come up with such a plan was probably not simple.
I need a favor. My boyfriend and I devised a plan and will offer you 300,000 yuan as a reward.
She wanted me to marry her boyfriend, and after registering and holding a wedding banquet, he would immediately give me a bride price of 100,000 yuan as a deposit. Then, I had to cheat on him, giving him a reason to divorce me. After the divorce, he would give me the remaining 200,000 yuan.
I've explained the plan. Do you understand, sister?
I wasn't stupid. Of course, I understood. Although I had no practical experience, I had heard plenty about the scheming and plotting in marriages.
You mean, I should marry him, and after he gets the property, I should divorce him. When he's down, you will comfort him, and his family will naturally accept you.
You're very smart, sister.
But I don't want to. Marriage is a big deal, not a child's game. And once I'm divorced, it will be hard to find a suitable partner in the future.
I know it's difficult for you, but I love him very much. Please help me. At least for you, during this time, you won't have to worry about daily expenses and can solve your financial problems.
She hit my weak spot. Just a moment ago, my phone had been buzzing with repayment reminders.
All right.
Sister, if you can conceive his child before the property is divided, we'll give you an extra 200,000 yuan. Don't worry, you won't have to take care of the child. I'll treat it as my own.
My smile froze on my face. She was still a young girl, with such naive thoughts. A few days later, I met my husband, John. He was handsome, well-built, and the type I had always admired. He was known as the Iceberg Prince, with many female colleagues chasing after him. Yet, he ended up on the path of arranged marriage.
Perhaps he was too devoted, willing to hang on to one cotton tree rather than bask in the spring sunshine and wander through a sea of flowers.
In this light, Since that blind date with Emma, we hadn't contacted each other. All my tasks came from John. Recently, I had nothing much to do, just staying home being a good daughter-in-law and wife. My biological mother occasionally called to check on me. We hadn't been in touch much for a long time since she had her own new family. She remarried when I was 12, to a man with a child from his previous marriage. Later, she had a son with him, a brother 13 years younger than me whom I've never met. My relationship with my mother had long been distant, and compared to my mother-in-law was more like a real mother to me. My mother-in-law's fondness for me wasn't without reason. As the fortune teller said, I was a woman who could bear children well. 1 month later, my monthly visitor stopped coming. I was pregnant. This news brought immense joy to my in-laws, but John remained indifferent. To him, I was probably just a tool driven by money. Since then, John became even colder towards me, often working late, claiming it was for work, but I knew he was with Emma. Men are indeed driven by their lower instincts. Since he couldn't touch me, he spent more time with Emma. I felt pathetic because my husband was openly seeing someone else. But from the beginning, Emma was his true partner, and I was just a hired stand-in. This relationship made me depressed for several days. My mother-in-law noticed my mood and often urged John to come home early to accompany me, even calling him during his overtime to hurry back. But John only paid lip service, agreeing but taking no real action.
Emily, remember your place. Take good care of the baby and don't disturb us. Tell his mom not to call John late at night, elderly people should sleep early.
I chuckled coldly. Her tone was a far cry from the delicate demeanor I had seen before. I felt deceived, my heart and body sold off. Although John was usually cold towards me, he accompanied me to every prenatal checkup. Around 3 months into the pregnancy, when the fetus was stable, John even arranged a cheating partner for me. How eager he was to put a green hat on himself. One night, John took Emma out for a late-night snack and brought me along. We went to a hot pot restaurant. Since I couldn't eat spicy food, John ordered a divided pot, with the bone broth side for me. Soon, a tall, handsome man in casual clothes patted John's shoulder and greeted.
"Brother, I'm here."
Through John's introduction, I met this man, David, John's good buddy and my designated cheating partner. I wasn't the only one surprised. Emma seemed unaware of John's arrangement and didn't expect him to involve his childhood friend.
Isn't this too soon? Emily is still pregnant.
It's not too soon. They need to get familiar.
We did need to get familiar, as my acting skills were mediocre. David, in terms of looks, was no less than John, just poorer, dressed in off-brand clothes. His acting was good, instantly getting into character, serving me food and handing me tissues, caring for me like the baby was his. Later, I learned he sympathized with me. My mother-in-law called, urging us to go home, saying it wasn't good for a pregnant woman to stay out late, so the dinner ended. But before parting ways, John insisted on taking Emma home first, giving his buddy a ride along the way. For some reason, I became particularly irritable and somewhat depressed during pregnancy. On the way, I wanted water, but John told me to wait until we got home. After several unsuccessful requests, I started crying out of thirst. John had no choice but to pull over and take me to a nearby supermarket for water, grumbling about my fussiness. Meanwhile, I vaguely heard Emma's cold laughter from the back seat. David, however, was gentle and considerate.
It's okay. We're not in a hurry. We'll wait in the car.
She hit my weak spot. Just a moment ago, my phone had been buzzing with repayment reminders.
All right.
Sister, if you can have his child before the property is divided, we'll give you an extra $200,000. Don't worry, you won't have to take care of the child. I'll treat it as my own.
My smile froze on my face. She was still a young girl, with such naive thoughts. Unknowingly, I was already 4 months pregnant, but it wasn't very noticeable. Since David was detained, John had been coming home on time every day, claiming to take care of me and keep me company. But I felt it was because Emma had been neglecting him.
John, why haven't you been spending time with Emma lately?
That woman is always in a bad mood. I don't want to deal with her.
From my recent observations, Emma had indeed been cold towards John. Although they occasionally chatted, her tone was perfunctory. Emma hadn't sought out John, but she did come to me, suggesting we meet in person. When I arrived at the trendy cafe, Emma had already ordered a table full of beautiful afternoon tea treats.
Sit down, Emily. Eat more, you've got to keep up your strength.
I've been busy lately and have neglected John. He might be upset and ignoring me.
You're right. Actually, I wanted to speed up our plan. Men's hearts can change quickly, like David. I never expected him to have so many women. Anyway, I'm worried that the longer this drags on, the more likely John will.
So what do you want to do?
I want you to introduce me to John's parents as your close friend. You can say, I'm visiting to take care of you, and I can use the opportunity to get closer to them. They know about me, but I've never visited them in person.
Is that all, or do you have other intentions?
What do you mean, sister?
Are you planning to expose me?
Sister, you are indeed smart. I have intimate photos of you and David, as well as records of your hotel stays. When the time is right, I will reveal your deception. But sister, I've considered your situation too. I'll minimize the harm to you. Once the house is divided, and with the extra money for the child, I'll give you half. Besides, you probably want to get out of this situation soon. John doesn't love you, so it's better to free yourself and return to your own life.
You have a point. My colleague is looking for me, hold on.
I replied to the message, finished my cake, and told her seriously.
But I don't want to. I have to go now.
As I stood up, Emma hurriedly tried to stop me.
Sister, think it over. Let's talk it through before you leave.
No, my colleague needs me urgently. We'll talk later.
Emma panicked, grabbing my clothes and showing a fierce expression.
Emily, who do you think you are? If you don't agree today, I can ruin you anytime. You won't get any money and will be disgraced.
So be it.
I've thought it through. Instead of earning $50,000, I'd rather make this real. I want John.
My words enraged her, and in the struggle, I fell hard. Pain. Red liquid flowed down my thigh, blurring my vision. Emma stood there, pale and muttering.
No. It wasn't me, it wasn't me.
At the same time, a familiar man rushed over, quickly picked me up, and headed straight for the hospital. I heard the increasingly distant shouts of my in-laws scolding Emma.
I didn't expect you to be so vicious. Our family will never accept you. If anything happens to Emily, we won't let you off. You'll end up in jail.
David went to jail, and Emma's plan completely fell apart. everything was wrapped up, and I could prepare to return to my stable life. Most importantly, my debts were almost cleared.
Let's go to the hospital alone. You're not pregnant, and we need to clarify things.
This all started 5.5 months ago.
Sister, if you can conceive his child before the house is divided, we will give you an extra 200,000. You won't have to take care of the child. I will treat it as my own.
I always found it strange. If this young girl truly loved her boyfriend, how could she willingly let her man share a bed with another woman? Moreover, if I were the mother, how could I easily give up my own child?
After learning about the demolition compensation for my family, my parents started looking for a match for me, but I had no interest in that. My brother David then introduced me to Emma, a sweet, pure, and virtuous girl.
Since it was his brother's goodwill, he tried dating Emma. However, after a drunken incident, Emma claimed they had been intimate and that she was pregnant, subtly asking John to take responsibility. John, being a responsible person, didn't want to marry someone he didn't love. While he hesitated, Emma claimed she had a miscarriage and couldn't conceive anymore.
I felt very guilty and told my family about it. My parents naturally disagreed and told me to clarify the situation. So, I investigated privately and found out that Emma's infertility wasn't due to one miscarriage but several. I wasn't even sure if I had been intimate with her that night. I woke up to find us both naked in bed. I suspect I had been set up and even doubted that Emma and David had a relationship.
He didn't bother to dig deeper and lied to Emma, saying his parents disapproved of her because her birth date was inauspicious and she was infertile. But Emma didn't give up and came up with a marriage scam. Since that was the case, John decided to play along.
I'm not stupid either. Since I'm paying you, you have to follow my lead.
And in John's plan, I had no losses, only gains. To avoid his parents setting him up with more matches, we got fake marriage certificates and went on a honeymoon. Essentially, we just traveled together and took some wedding photos to post on social media, visible only to his parents, Emma and David. But soon after we returned, his mother urged us to have a child. John said it was better to go along with it to avoid more trouble. So, we pretended to try for a baby. We turned off the lights, played some videos on the TV, and put on headphones to browse our phones. Sometimes he slept on the bed, and I slept on the floor, and vice versa. He even sacrificed a bit by cutting his hand and smearing some blood on the sheets. I once asked John, "Isn't it wrong to deceive your parents like this?"
They are obsessed with the compensation from the government and keep pushing me. A wife and a child can get us 100 square meters of housing, so they keep pressuring me. We can deceive anyone but not the government.
John was right. However, if his parents found out the truth, it would be too late. They could find a new daughter-in-law, but they couldn't magically produce grandchildren. I timed it right and announced that I was expecting. Seeing the joy on John's parents' faces, I felt incredibly guilty. And John began his next step, luring the enemy deeper.
Emma, let's go out tonight. Dinner and a movie?
He started actively courting Emma, showering her with attention. After work, he would go straight to her place, take her out to dinner, and spend the evenings driving around the city. They went to the hilltop to watch the stars, to the cinema to watch movies, and deep into scenic spots to catch fireflies.
John is so wonderful. Emily, please don't disturb our dates.
It was quite amusing, her self-important attitude revealing her true nature. When I first met her, I really thought this seemingly weak and innocent girl was in a difficult situation. Once John had completely occupied Emma's time, it was my turn to act. My task was to win over my affair partner, David. When David appeared, I specifically watched Emma's expression. Her surprise, grievance, and dissatisfaction were quite interesting. A woman's intuition told me that Emma was very unhappy about this man being close to me. She tried to find excuses to break us apart, but under John's lead, she failed.
We need to give them some private space to expose themselves.
The car's dashcam has been broken for a long time and needs to be reset. Let's go to the supermarket. I'm extremely thirsty.
It was a large supermarket, and the round trip took at least 20 minutes. We did indeed shop, not only buying water but also leisurely eating some snacks. During these days, John had been sticking to Emma, taking her around but never even holding her hand. John found her unclean. But to prevent Emma from meeting David, he had to occupy as much of her private time as possible. And for someone like David, who couldn't go long without female company, it was unbearable to go without for so many days. So when he finally got some alone time with Emma, how could he not seize the opportunity? Afterwards, we saw their inappropriate behavior on the dash cam. Just one more look made me feel sick. That night, John washed his car 3 times. Now that we had confirmed their relationship, everything else became easier. John and I divided the work, attacking from both sides. I was responsible for winning over David, while John continued to deceive Emma, cutting off their interactions and then breaking them down one by one.
David is a two-faced player. Be careful.
What could happen to a pregnant woman like me? If worse comes to worst, I'll pretend to have a stomachache. He wouldn't dare do anything to me considering the aftermath.
But I still underestimated David. He almost tried to take advantage of the pregnant woman. Luckily, I was quick-witted and hid in the bathroom, and the timely arrival of a card advertising poor services saved me. This budget hotel had a bad reputation. Although it hadn't been exposed yet, it had caught the attention of the police. So we planned to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, dealing with the player while also contributing to society. Sure enough, David took the bait. After all, our pincer attack plan had left this player without an outlet for a long time. People are more likely to make mistakes when desperate. We just didn't expect that one of the girls had contracted a disease. Thanks to our anonymous tip, the player was caught red-handed, and the hotel was shut down for investigation. The news of David's reckless behavior and subsequent detention reached Emma's ears, and it was clear she was very disappointed.
We need to shatter her dreams completely.
John and I collaborated again, using a divide-and-conquer strategy. Once we confirmed their relationship, we realized that the mastermind behind Emma's marriage scam was likely David. This playboy not only coveted beauty but also his brother's inheritance.
He borrowed money from me several times, always repaying $2,000 and borrowing $5,000. I'm not a fool.
John eventually refused to lend him more money, even telling him he didn't need to repay the previous loans. David was displeased, and hearing about the demolition of John's family property, introduced the devoted Emma to John, under the guise of securing the property and then divorcing, so he could marry Emma and live a prosperous life. However, we saw through it all.
I deliberately exposed David's history with women in front of Emma, describing the playboy's disgraceful behavior in vivid detail.
To test Emma, John repeatedly asked her out, only to be met with rejection. But for us, that was good news.
She had no time to deal with me because she was busy handling David's ex-girlfriends.
John knew almost all of David's girlfriends, except for Emma.
Among these ex-girlfriends, some saw through David's true nature and broke up with him, while others were discarded by him. Those who were discarded were eager to find and confront the new girl. So, I sold Emma out.
But that wasn't enough to make her show herself. So, when Emma finally managed to deal with David's ex-girlfriends and came to find John, he was indifferent. When she asked if he was angry, he replied with a single message.
I've been busy dealing with my brother's issues. He messed around and even contracted a disease.
Emma didn't message again. We could imagine her despair at that moment, completely giving up on David and pinning her hopes on John. So, she came to me. At this point, we planned to wrap things up quickly. We set the time and place, and John took his parents out for afternoon tea. While I was talking to Emma, my colleague, who was actually John, messaged me.
How's it going? We're at the door.
Everything is ready, come in.
Then, I burst the blood bag hidden under my abdomen. At the same time, John's parents rushed over, panicked and furious, and started scolding Emma. John seized the moment to take me to the hospital. But we didn't go to the hospital. We went to a nearby 5-star hotel, where I washed off the blood and changed into clean clothes. We also thought about how to explain things to his parents.
John, won't you get scolded when we get home?
Are you kidding? Why would only I get scolded? Don't you have a part in this?
Ha! You're so devious.
After some discussion, we decided to come clean. After several urgent calls from his parents, John called back.
Mom, Dad, don't worry, Emily is fine. We're coming back now.
Yes, we were going back to face the music. John told his parents to stay calm and not get emotional no matter what they heard. Then, he confessed everything we had done, word for word.
I don't want to get married just for the government subsidy, and I don't want to have children for that reason either. You see the money, but not my lifelong happiness. Soon, the household registration information will be updated, and it will be too late. Just think of it as saving money for the government and contributing to society.
Actually, when his parents saw me alive and well, they had already guessed most of it. Moreover, our intention was to combat evil thoughts, so they didn't get angry, just sighed regretfully. Not long after, John's father suddenly said,
"It's not too late. You two can get married again, and I'll throw a big banquet. Forget about destination weddings, they're all nonsense."
He's right. Emily, you should stay here.
My awkward smile froze on my face for a long time. They really liked me as their daughter-in-law. But their fondness for me wasn't without reason. I did stay at the John family for a few more days to avoid Emma's harassment. However, during these days, John and I no longer shared a room. His mother had sent him to the study. Emma was still persistent, sending me messages.
Sister, how are things now? I really didn't push you that day. Can you explain to John's parents? Sister, please help me again. As long as you say a few good words, I'll find a way to give you any amount of money you need in the future.
How ridiculous. This young girl still didn't get it. I couldn't be bothered to argue with her, so I typed a line. Young lady, stop it. John doesn't want you, and the John family has nothing to do with you. If you keep clinging on, you'll only bring trouble upon yourself. Emma was quiet for a moment. If she were smart enough, she should be able to figure out the whole situation by now. But she wasn't that smart. A few days later, she sent me another message.
Sister, you have to help me because I'm your sister.
Then she sent a recording, a snippet from our initial conversation, where she had captured me saying, "I'll marry him first, then divorce him once the house is secured."
If you don't help me, I'll use this recording to accuse you of fraud. You won't get anything then.
How childish and laughable. I replied. Young lady, a recording can't threaten me. We haven't even gotten married, so there's no fraud.
For your mother's sake, you should help me. You probably didn't expect this, but from the moment I called you sister, it was sincere because it's true. Your mother should have told you that when she married her second husband, I was already around. If you don't help me this time, I'll tell my dad you're bullying me, and he'll make sure to take care of your mom at home.
Oh. Is that so? That explains how she knew about my financial troubles. She must have learned about me and my situation from my mom, then persuaded my mom to encourage me to go on a blind date without mentioning her. If the blind date succeeded, she could use her sister's status to blackmail me if anything went wrong during the plan. But she was still too young and naive. I replied with a few simple words. Hasn't your dad called you?
Why would he call me?
You lied about working away from home and left, but your dad should know the whole story by now. Little sister, as a girl, you should maintain your integrity. Running off for an online relationship isn't good. Planning a fraudulent marriage while having an affair is illegal. As your sister, I can't bear to hand you over to the police, so I sent some things to your dad to let him discipline you.
What did you send?
Nothing much, just a little video from John's car dashcam. Oh, and your health report. Modern medicine can treat infertility, so take care of your body and don't mess around. Then, I deleted Emma. A few days later, I heard from my mom that Emma had been taken back by her dad. In my spare time, I went back to the house my grandmother left me to tidy up, preparing to move back. However, my fake in-laws didn't want me to leave, they couldn't bear to part with me. With no other choice, I had to move secretly. She hit my weak spot. Just a moment ago, my phone had been buzzing with repayment reminders.
All right.
Sister, if you can have his child before the property is divided, we'll give you an extra 200,000 yuan. Don't worry, you won't have to take care of the child. I'll treat it as my own.
My smile froze on my face. She was still a young girl, with such naive thoughts.